12 years ago, I started skydiving, and since then, I've accumulated 2,400 skydives. As you could imagine, some of these jumps start to run together. There are a few that stand out, though. When I had around 800 skydives, I did a jump with 44 of my friends. It was a pretty awesome jump. I remember being in the airplane at 14,000 feet, waiting for the green light to come on, and when the green light came on, I ran towards the tailgate and jumped out and followed all my friends. I dove out as fast as I could, flew down to everybody, and then slowly got into my position. So we sat there and waited for everyone to, or flew there, I guess, waited for everyone to get up there, and everyone got into formation. At about 6,000 feet, it was time for me to turn and track away. I needed a clear spot to open up my parachute. So I tracked and flew as fast as I could, found a good spot, stopped, waved, and pulled my parachute. And something wasn't right. I could tell right away. The parachute was all spun up. I was spinning pretty violently underneath it. I remember looking at my altimeter, and I didn't have time to fix the problem. I needed to get rid of that main parachute so that I could open up my reserve. So I looked right, grabbed right, looked left, grabbed left, pull right, pull left, and I was under a reserve parachute. That main was gone. I had successfully cut away from my parachute. In skydiving, sometimes we have to cut away in order to land safely from a jump. Fortunately, this was my only cutaway that I've had to have in skydiving. I found a clear spot to land, and I had a nice tiptoe landing after the jump. I was really relieved to have made it through that jump. So in skydiving, we have pretty clear-cut procedures that we follow. When something goes wrong with your main parachute, you know what you need to do. You just follow those procedures, and you need to get rid of the main and open up your reserve. That's exactly what I did. In life, it's not always that easy. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is cutting away from expectations. Cutting away from expectations that society puts on you, your family puts on you, and your friends put on you. When I was in the 6th grade, I was on an Odyssey of the Mind team. Basically how the Odyssey of the Mind works, you have a challenge that you have to work on, and a skit that goes along with it. It's an out-of-school activity, and you work on it throughout the year, and then in the spring you have a competition. This year, I was on a team with 5 boys and 2 girls, and one of the boys' dads was our coach. I distinctly remember this meeting where we were working on the vehicle, and the coach was actually working on it, and he wasn't even supposed to actually work on it. But the coach was working on it, and I wanted to help. So I remember I reached for it, and he actually pulled it back. He told me and the other girl to go work on the costumes for the skit. As you could imagine, we were both pretty pissed, to be honest. So we decided to quit the team. 3 years later, we had another opportunity to do another team. This one involved building a vehicle also, and it was a vehicle that could hold 2 people and was powered by a jack. So this year we had all girls on our team, and it was an awesome experience. We built this really cool vehicle that was powered by a bumper jack, got to get into the design of it, and then actually building it, and it worked. It was really awesome. So it was really a great experience. 5 years later, I had just finished my sophomore year of college, and I had no idea what I wanted to major in. I had been through every major in the book. Like I would take a class, and I'm like, this is so awesome, I'm gonna major in this, and then I would take another class, and it would happen again. So I remember I got a bit frustrated, as you can imagine, so I decided I was gonna quit school. I called my mom and told her the news. As you could imagine, she wasn't so excited about that. She convinced me to stay in school. And she was right, it probably didn't make sense to stop. You know, if you stop, then it's probably gonna be harder to get back into school. And I'd already spent a ton of money in loans that I was gonna have to pay back at some point. So I decided she was right, I would stay in school. So I just need to pick something. So I thought a lot about it, and I decided that engineering would be a good choice for me. So I signed up for the pre-engineering program and then applied to other universities because mine didn't have an engineering program. I remember the second day at the University of South Carolina in my mechanical engineering program. I showed up and it was totally different than my previous experience. In my classes, I'd be one of maybe 2 girls out of a class size of 40. and the students were just totally different. Like, they were all about being mechanical engineering students. They would stay up all night studying at the engineering building. They didn't really have friends outside of school. Like, it was all about being an engineering student. And as you can imagine, I didn't really fit in so well with that stereotype. For me, I was a mechanical engineering student, but I worked part-time. I had friends outside of school. So I definitely didn't feel like I fit in, and then I didn't look like all the other students either. So the reason I tell these stories is that sometimes our society tends to put gender stereotypes on us. Sometimes we're given a lot of expectations even when we're really young, and we may not even realize it. So in all those cases, I cut away from those expectations. So whether it was quitting the team when the coach wouldn't let me work on the vehicle, and then later on picking a major in college where it was mostly white guys. So I continued on in school, and as I was graduating my senior year, I earned a National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship. As you can imagine, it's pretty awesome to get a fellowship like this. Like, instead of taking out loans, now I was being paid to go to college. Like, this was the best thing ever. And I had a pretty old car, an old used car, and I remember thinking, I'm gonna buy a newer used car with that extra loan money. Like, it was gonna be pretty sweet. And then I made a tandem skydive. And it was in May, so just after I graduated, and I loved it. I loved everything about it. All of a sudden, I didn't care what kind of car I drove. Like, mine would totally work. It would help me get out to the airport. So I decided I'd drive the old car, started the student skydiving program the next day. It was really amazing. I loved everything about it. I totally immersed myself in it. What I didn't realize at the time, though, is that my friends and my family wouldn't quite understand my attraction to this new hobby. I remember really loving everything about it. Like, I was there all the time at the airport. I would be up there when the weather was looking bad, just for the hopes that maybe I'd be able to squeeze in one skydive. The jumps are really sort of a Zen experience. Like, there's nothing that'll force you to focus on the moment than making a skydive. Like, you're not thinking about other things that are going on in your life. You're really sort of there in the moment. So that was one of the things that really attracted me. Also, the community is just amazing. You have people from all different walks of life, all different backgrounds, and they're all there for that one common purpose. Unfortunately, my mom didn't see the same attraction to skydiving as I did. I remember she would call me on the phone, she'd have an argument all laid out, and she was convinced she was going to convince me to stop skydiving, like this was going to happen. She was really worried about me. Like, I totally understood. She was sure that after a matter of time I'd either be hurt badly or even worse, killed. And of course, no one wants their kids to be hurt. So a couple of months after skydiving, I met my husband, Robin. So at the time I was just dating him, obviously. And my mom met him, and I remember her saying, "Oh, so that's what it is. It's about a boy. That's why you're in skydiving." You could imagine I was just a little bit insulted by that. But I also understood that she couldn't really understand what it was all about. So around this time, I wasn't as close to my family as I was before. One big part of the reason was because I was at the airport every free moment. Another reason was because my family didn't really approve of what I was doing. And it wasn't just my mom. Here's a card that my grandpa sent me for Christmas one year. On the inside of it, he signs Grandpa Files, and he says, "I sure wish you'd give up skydiving. If all you want to do is jump out of planes, then you should just quit college and throw away all your learning. What a waste," in capital letters. So this was pretty harsh. I love my grandpa. Like, I love my grandpa. I love everything about my grandpa. And to see that disappointment in a Christmas card of all things, you're all excited. Christmas card. I love getting cards. But yeah, to get something like that, it was pretty rough. So I actually had my husband start filtering cards after that from him. And fortunately, word got back to him, and he didn't send any more that had this message in it. And it wasn't even just my family. My friends also didn't understand. Prior to this, I'd hang out at a bar on Friday night, go have a couple of beers. Everything was all good. But now all of a sudden it mattered if I was hungover on a Saturday. Like, I needed to be alert and awake and all ready to go for the entire day of jumping. So I didn't go out to bars and hang out with my friends anymore. They really, really didn't understand. So the reason I tell these stories is that sometimes you do have to separate yourself from your family and your friends to really figure out who you are. For me, it happened to be a skydiver, but it was something that really resonated well with who I am, and I'm so glad that I did actually separate myself a little bit from them for that time. Fortunately, typically your family and friends really love you, and with some time, they'll come around, like it won't be so bad. And my mom actually ended up, a couple of years later, I had become an instructor, and she worked out that maybe I wasn't actually going to die. And she actually made a tandem skydive, which was really awesome. Yeah, I was pretty surprised. And my grandpa also came out and watched me land from a couple of different jumps. So they finally did come around. So I continued school, and as I was finishing up my PhD, I applied for a job here at UGA, a faculty position. I remember as I was sitting in the exit interview with the department head, he warned me that a faculty job is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Even when you're not working, you're going to be thinking about working. Like, everything is going to be about working. And I remember telling him that as I was standing at the edge of the airplane, or at the edge of the door, I wouldn't be thinking about my job. I was going to be sort of focused in that moment. And I assured him that I would work hard when I was working, but work wouldn't be my life. Like, my family's too important to me, and I have other things that I really enjoy. So I left that interview, and I wondered what I was getting myself into. Like, is there any way I could fit in a place where everyone works 24 hours a day and 7 days a week? And it's true. Like, you meet a lot of professors, and they really do. They work a lot. I wasn't sure I'd ever be able to fit in like that. So I left the interview, and then it turned out I got the job, as y'all probably could have guessed. So I started working. It was a tenure-track position, and basically the way these tenure-track positions work is if you apply for tenure after 5 or 6 years. If you don't get tenure, you get fired. Like, you lose your job. So it's really, really a big deal. So I started doing my research and stuff, and I was doing some research on exploring the impact on creativity of an interdisciplinary art and engineering design course. And my research sort of led into this interest in the role of emotion in student learning. And so here I am, the second female faculty hired into my department. I was hired to do educational research, the first person hired to do educational research. And I had a qualitative research program, which you could imagine isn't really typical in an engineering department. And so all of a sudden now I want to study this role of emotions in student learning. And it was a really exciting project. So I remember going to talk to my engineering mentor about it. And he quickly warned me that this was not a good idea. He was like, just wait until after tenure. Like, he was genuinely worried about me, as you could imagine. So I was the second female faculty hired into the department, and here I want to study emotion. Followed a little bit too much into a feminine stereotype, as you can imagine. So I considered his advice. Like, he was probably right, and I really didn't want to lose my job. I do really like it. So I thought about it, and I decided that it wasn't worth it. I wanted to be true to myself and do what really resonated with me. And I was really passionate about this new project on emotions, and so I decided to do it. So me and my colleagues, we wrote 2 papers and prepared a National Science Foundation grant to study it. The grant got funded, which was super awesome, but I ended up with the word emotion 3 times in my CV. So I'm pretty sure I was the first person to go up in engineering that had the word emotion in a title of anything in my CV. So I'm really happy to report that in December of 2011, I got a letter that I received tenure. So, this was awesome. This means I wasn't losing my job. Yay. But it also meant that my colleagues really valued me as a colleague, even though I went out on a limb and did something that wasn't typical. So not only did I study emotions, but I also lived a full life while I was a university professor. So I would come home on the evenings and I wouldn't work at night, I wouldn't work on the weekends. I really made this life as a university professor really work for me. So again, I cut away from expectations that were put on me from my work colleagues, expectations about the type of research that I was supposed to do, also expectations about how I was going to work, and that I was going to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I managed to make this work for me. So in most of these stories that I've told, the expectations tend to lessen with some time. There is one aspect of my life that this doesn't seem to be happening. So my husband, Robin, and I have decided to not have kids. We both really, really love kids, but we've just decided that we live really full lives, and for us, it's just not right for us. There isn't really a shortage of kids, so somehow I didn't think this would be such a big deal. You don't realize that society puts these expectations on us that we go to college, get married, and have kids. And it seems that if you break that chain anywhere in there, then people start asking lots of questions. I remember I'd get questions from perfect strangers. As soon as we're engaged to be married, so when are y'all going to start a family? When are you going to start having kids? And this has continued for almost 10 years now. Hopefully at some point it might actually stop. I remember my mom at one point even saying that she almost wished she hadn't stressed school so much for me and my sisters because we were focusing too much on school and not on having kids. So the reason I tell you this story is not to tell you to not have kids. You should certainly have kids if you want to have kids. But I'd like you to think about what really resonates with you and with your life. And if that is having kids, then you should. But if it isn't, you shouldn't just because that's what everyone expects you to do. It would be easier to live a life that everyone expects you to, but it wouldn't be the best life for you. So I'm sure if my mom and grandpa were alive today, they'd be proud of the woman that I've become. They'd be proud of me as a university professor, and they'd be proud of me as a freestyle skydiver. But the reality is, if I had followed their advice and done what they'd wanted me to do, then I wouldn't have become the person that I am today. So I'd like you all to think about your lives. So are there times that you've cut away from expectations? Think about times that maybe you have, or that you should have, but you didn't. So I'd like you to encourage you to try it. Cut away from expectations. Do what really resonates with you so that you can live an awesome life. Let's see where it takes us. Thank you.